Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And today we will be ending September and kicking off October in a way. And we're going to be doing that with a cartoon that kind of blends a little bit of everything and is the perfect thing that can get us through September and into October. We are recording this on September 23rd around about quarter to 10 p.m. It is it might be a doozy, it might take a while, but hooray. Anyway, if you don't know what we are Why Does This Exist? We are a podcast that talks about the weirdest in pop culture. Whether it's a cartoon like we're about to do, a movie like we did a couple of weeks ago, or even a video game like we did last time when we were talking about God of War, and everything in between. You can support us. You can support the show a number of ways. The best way is through Patreon. That's patreon.com/whydoesthisexist. Head on over, give us some money, and yeah, we'll let you into the Discord server. You can hang out with us, and you can find out what's cooking in the pipeline, and you can pitch some ideas. And maybe if we think you're cool enough, we'll let you be on the show. We will also roast you on the air. I'm not going to give any more demonstrations, but if you've listened to this the last couple of weeks, you know exactly what we mean. So we'll just insult you on the air. Thanks for coming, kiss my ass, things like that. Anyway. You can also find us on social media as mostly on Facebook. You can send us some weird stuff, and we might give you a shout out on the show. And also, you can support us. Probably the easiest way is just by subscribing to our YouTube channel, so that we can grow the numbers and we can make money that way. So go on it. Why Does This Exist? You'll find us, and that's about it. So that's the news. Here's the weather. You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues, so let's get on with the goddamn show. We are talking about Courage the Cowardly Dog today. For those of you in digital media device land, why don't you tell the good people who maybe didn't have a childhood or weren't loved in any way, shape, or form what Courage the Cowardly Dog was? To all of these deprived people who did not have cable TV growing up.
Well,
I didn't have cable TV growing up.
I think the best way to describe it is to just go by what the narrator says in the opening, which is abandoned as a pup. He was found by Muriel, who lives in the middle of nowhere with her husband, Eustace Bagg. But creepy stuff happens in nowhere, and it's up to Courage to save his new home. So basically, the premise of the show is Courage is a pink dog who is owned by Muriel and her husband Eustace, and they live in literally the middle of nowhere, Kansas. And their farmhouse is literally in just like a barren, empty plain, and it's the only thing that's there next to a road.
Yeah.
So it is quite literally the middle of nowhere.
Yes, the middlest middle of nowhere that there
Yes.
ever was.
Yeah. And yeah, so apparently this town of nowhere, Kansas, is like plagued by a number of supernatural and just very strange events, anywhere from like ghosts and demons to aliens and Bigfoot.
Yeah,
And basically,
like, you name it, there's a bunch of weird stuff that goes on in there.
yeah. and the farmhouse just happens to be like the center of all these like weird shenanigans. Basically, like everything bad that happens in nowhere happens to the Bag family, Eustace and Muriel and Courage. And so Courage is obviously he's Courage the cowardly dog, but it's kind of a misleading title because Courage, like, yes, he's scared and he's constantly screaming and afraid of whatever he has to face, but he literally faces it every time and saves Muriel every time.
Yeah,
So
he always overcomes his fears regardless. And I mean, towards the end, he's not really afraid of whatever it is anymore. He's really just
no,
afraid the first time that he whatever the first encounter.
yeah,
So he kind of gets more startled, and then like after a while, he just kind of gets used to it and just does whatever he needs to do to overcome it.
yeah, and so it's interesting because Courage's character itself, like I said, he's afraid and he screams a lot and he's always like yelling and like afraid and it's funny because he'll like scream and like transform into like something else and like it's just like very like old school kind of like cartoon comedy where he like he'll transform into something and like fall apart or something when
Yeah,
he's afraid. Um
old school in that sense, and also like a rubber hose ish animation style.
yeah,
But it did innovate in a lot of ways because the animation style it bounces around a lot, like
yeah,
combining it combines CGI, and this was I believe the show. How old was the
late
what
90s.
year?
So the pilot
Let's
episode.
just say 96, 97, or something
No, well,
like
not
that.
the actual show came out in '99. The pilot episode,
Okay.
which was known as "The Chicken from Outer Space," that originally aired in February of 1996, and that was actually like nominated for the Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film
Yes, it was.
at the time, and it was featured on Cartoon Network. Used to have like an animation showcase called "What a Cartoon." And the Chicken from Outer Space episode was often featured on that, and that was basically just like a showcase of like cartoons that were either in development or pilot episodes, that could possibly air and they were like usually shorts and there was a number of other cartoons that actually were picked up that were featured on What a Cartoon.
I think the Angry Beavers is one.
No, because
I
Angry
don't
Beavers was
remember.
Nickelodeon,
Oh,
but
that's right. No, what am I thinking of? I'm thinking of a different cartoon, but it wasn't that.
yeah, there were a number. I think Powerpuff Girls, I think, was originally on What a
Maybe
Cartoon.
Johnny Bravo, I think, was as well.
Yeah, Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy.
That might be
Um,
the one I'm thinking of.
yeah.
I don't know how I get the two confused, but yeah.
Um. So, anyway, where was I? Yeah. So it came out in '99, and yeah, like you said, the animation they had a number of different animation styles that were like really kind of interesting because they combined them and like different things like use different. So like there's one episode where Courage is having a nightmare and he sees this like abstract like face that looks like a piece of like modern art that's attached to a face. And it's like you're not perfect, and it's CGI, and it's like, and of course, like Courage awakes from this nightmare screaming, and it's like
Yeah.
it's just very bizarre.
Well,
Um,
the episode that freaked a lot of people out as kids was like the second episode was King's Ramses Curse because the ghost of King's Ramses was he was CGI and everything else around him was just regular like 2D animation. So and also the light shading really freaked people out,
yeah, well, that
and
was
his
actually one of
voice
my favorite
too.
episodes. I liked it. I thought it was hilarious. The
Oh
King Ramses
yeah, no, I
episode.
thought it was great too. But just a lot of people apparently when I was doing research, yes, ladies and gentlemen, we did research for this show. We're not just reading the Wikipedia like you tend to call us out on. When I was doing my research on this thing, it a lot of people, a lot of the YouTube content that I was listening to, they I want to say most of them, if not all of them, said that that particular episode really scared the bejesus out of them as a kid. Now, granted, I
That's
don't
interesting
know
because I
how
think there
old.
were way worse episodes than that. I thought that was a
Oh
more
yeah, there
lighthearted
were
episode.
too. Well, the one where I forget what it's called, but the one where there's like where they have like the person, like they have the actual person's face
Yeah, I was thinking
in it.
exactly of that. It's like
That
a
one,
white face, and it's like
Yeah.
it's almost like rotoscoped or whatever in.
Yeah,
Yeah, that one is
some people think that that episode like was what got the show was what ended the show
yeah, that was a
because
fucking weird
yeah,
episode.
that
That
was
was
a
very
weird
freaky.
one. I don't know if that's true, but like one of the rumors is that somebody who was running the network, their like niece or something, saw the show and they saw that episode and they got really terrified, and that was like the thing where they were like, "Oh, I think we need to get rid of this thing." It
Yeah.
scared like, just something stupid. I don't know how true that is though.
Yeah. Um
But yeah, there's a bunch of weird stuff. Where like one of the last episodes, there's the one with the tree where
Magic
used to
Tree.
yeah, the
Yeah.
magic tree where like the face and the eyes are a person.
Some of them are actually pretty kind of like sad. Like a lot of the
That one
creatures
was particularly sad.
uh,
I felt
well,
bad for that one.
a lot of the creatures that courage encounters in like are actually tragic figures. Like
Yes.
there's one episode where there's it was in the first season where there's a hunchback that starts like living in the barn because he's kind of like homeless and he's outcast because he's a hunchback and he's ugly. And at first Courage is like afraid of him, but then like kind of realizes that he's really not a bad guy. He's just like a really like misshapen like unfortunate individual, and befriends him. And that happens a lot. Courage actually befriends a lot of the quote unquote enemies that are attacking the farm because like
Yeah,
they
like a
really
lot of
end
them are
up
just
being not bad.
misunderstood.
Yeah, a
Yeah,
lot
they're
of them
just misunderstood.
yeah, like the Bigfoot episode, like obviously it's Bigfoot, and everyone thinks, Eustace is trying to catch him so they can turn him in for a reward, and Courage is like freaked out at first because it's Bigfoot, but then like they learn that he's just like a mutated child, and like the mother comes and looks for him later on and takes him home,
Mm.
basically. Um,
I mean, there could be some truth to that. We don't know. No
yeah,
one's really caught a
yeah,
Bigfoot.
maybe. And I think that's another like it's an important part of like an important like lesson that you can kind of learn is that like you really can't judge a book by its cover, and most of the things that Courage encounters are like they look scary or evil or ugly, but they're really not. They're really like not bad at all. There's an episode where uh there's this giant robot named Randy who comes from a planet of robots, and basically like these robots go out throughout the universe and like conquer planets and destroy people and all that. But Randy just wants to make reindeer. He like whittles
Yes.
these little reindeer out of wood, and that's literally all he wants to do. And he, even he says it's like I don't want to destroy anyone. I just want to make reindeer.
Yeah,
And
and
it's hilarious because he like it sounds like Christopher Walken basically.
yeah, but I mean, also while he's doing this, he's enslaving Courage, Muriel, and Eustace.
Yeah, but that's
Which,
because he has to. Like it's like his
yeah,
duty is a robot to enslave them. But he doesn't. He says it repeatedly that he doesn't want to destroy anyone. He just wants to make reindeer.
yeah, and then eventually they find it, and they're like, "This is beautiful," and they kind of give him the business plan, and he's like, "You mean I don't have to do this anymore?" And they're like, "No,
Yeah,
you can do whatever you want. You're good at something. You have a talent." And he's like, "Oh, okay." So he goes back to his robot planet and he starts selling the reindeer.
yeah,
It's a happy episode.
yeah. There are a lot of like episodes like that
Or I
have like
mean,
a
well,
really
the tree
warm ending.
too. The tree is
Yeah,
also the one. Like Courage is freaked out by the magic tree at first because it like talks, um, and it like is a little disturbing. But then but then he realizes that the tree is just there to help them, and it can grant their wishes as long as they're nice to it. And then when Eustace, you know, gets jealous because they're relying on the tree for everything, then he wants to chop it down because he just gets super jealous because he's just like a crotchety jerk of an old man.
yeah,
And then like the tree starts like making his like negative wishes come true too, and you find out from that episode that, I mean, the moral of that one is obviously be careful what you wish for, but
hmm
the tree will grant any wish that it hears. So
yes,
so he wishes, for Muriel's head to get bigger, and then she gets like this elephantitis thing.
yeah,
And the recurring doctor that they have, he's just always completely useless, which is just like kind of funny for him to see.
yeah,
Um, and then eventually, then Courage tries to get the cure, and then Eustace just wants to chop the tree down. And Courage, he likes the tree now, and he's trying to save the tree.
Yeah.
So it's like you said, he does turn around a lot on the other ones. Or there's an episode, I think it's called Mask. Um, oh, the one with the face that we were talking about
Oh
is
yeah.
the face thing is the spirit of the harvest moon, and the episode is called the House of Discontent. But
Yeah.
anyway, there's like another one called Mask, which actually or something it had something to do with the mask where he's trying to he's helping this cat like try to find her friend where it's probably her lover, and because this was 96, it was supposed to be like, she was like her and her lover, they were just like a lesbian couple, and her friend was kidnapped by this like super macho like Doberman or something, and they need and like she needed courage and like she starts barging in on courage and thinking that courage like stole the mask or whatever, and then or like that she has to go through courage, and courage is like, I don't know what you're talking about, and like he eventually helps her and he's not freaked out by her anymore, and he like overcomes that fear too.
Yeah.
But
I,
there's also a lot of really crazy ones. There's some that are actually like legitimately problematic or evil. Like like Cat.
oh yeah, Dr. Katz
He's
or whatever.
Dr.
Katz
Katz is yeah, Dr. Katz is
or Katz. Yeah.
quite awful.
Yeah, he's a recurring villain. And he's usually like trying to like test some kind of product that he's made on them or something.
And they're usually all horrendous. They're all
Yeah.
usually very bad things for anybody.
Yeah. Um there's also one of the and a lot of the episodes kind of deal with like heavy topics and stuff like that, and one of the most famous episodes of that is the Tower of Dr. Zalost,
Hmm.
where Dr. Zalost is this guy who's like he's misunderstood and he's depressed and he's like completely incapable of dealing with it, and he becomes jealous that anybody else is happy, so he starts firing. He like has this giant tower on that can like walk. It's got like walking legs, and he starts firing cannonballs that make people depressed everywhere to like kind of like because he's like completely like overcome with depression. He hates that other people are happy. It's like Tony Soprano basically. He hates the happy wanderers around nowhere.
Mm.
And so he starts going after everybody, and it's kind of like there's some like a lot of heavy topics that some of the episodes deal with, especially like and like the Hunchback episode where like Eustace is like making fun of the guy because he's like different looking and he's got a deformity, and Courage kind of helps him out by like just writing like just keep calling Eustace bald basically. And so the Hunchback is like he takes out this note that Courage writes, and it's like, and you sir are extremely bald. And of course Eustace is very like self-conscious about his baldness, and like he just keeps getting madder and madder about it. But there's a lot of like themes like that where it deals with a lot of stuff that like kids kind of have to like learn to deal with in life, like just like dealing with bullies and depression, and it kind of does it in a way that's easier for like younger kids to understand. So it's actually like a really deep show. Like on the surface, it just seems like a horror / black comedy show, but there's a lot of like themes here that really kind of teach important lessons in life. And
Oh
especially
yeah.
like the fact that Courage is like really not a coward, because he faces his fears, and really like everyone thinks like bravery is just not being afraid, which is not true. Like the definition of bravery is being afraid but being able to face your fears head on and deal with it. And that is literally Courage in every episode. Like he always finds a way to defeat whatever is attacking, and he'll go after like perfect example is they order a mattress in one episode, and it turns out that the mattress is possessed, and Muriel ends up getting possessed by this demon. and like Eustace is trying to like her. This is a running theme throughout the series too, is that Courage has this computer in the attic, and every time something goes wrong, he like basically like looks it up on the computer, and the computer talks back to him, and is always like very snooty. It's got like this British accent, is always like snooty to him. But it always gives him the answer of like what to do. So like in the case of the mattress, it like tells him how to do like an exorcism, basically. And Eustace tries and fails miserably at it, and then Courage tries, and like he's like terrified Courage, but he still goes and does it, and is actually able to free Muriel from the demon, and then the demon possesses Eustace because it's the only other body in the room at the time. Um, and that also happens a lot. That's like a running gag throughout the series, of that like whatever like Courage saves Muriel, like whatever like was attacking her goes after Eustace, or Eustace somehow gets his comeuppance in the end because he's an asshole to Courage the whole time. Like
Yeah.
Eustace hates that Courage is like the center of attention, especially Muriel's attention, and like so constantly is trying to scare him or like hurt him or do something to him, like throw him outside.
He's just
He's just
always being mean to him on purpose. Like
yeah,
he's always, or if there's nothing going on, he kind of just kicks him when he's down just to do it.
basically, yeah.
And like that's a sub theme that a lot of kids like might resonate with too. Another one that I thought was interesting was it was well, this is twofold, but the series finale.
Yeah.
There were well, there's two parts of that. The first part is the Courage origin story, which we'll get to in a minute. But like but this one kind of well, I mean, this both of them relate to things in their own way. But this is like he's not really. It's not really like a demon or a ghost or anything that he's like that he's dealing with. He's dealing with like more of an issue that like a lot of kids would see. And there's like, you know, Eustace is just always is like constantly telling him, "Oh, you can't do anything right. You didn't do it right. This is wrong. How could you not do this?" And he's like berating Courage as usual, but he's coming after all of his achievements and everything that he's doing, or that he like isn't doing it very well. And then Courage, then like this like school instructor just shows up out of nowhere on a chalkboard, and she keeps like making him do all of these like various like school assignments
Yeah.
of just like writing his name and like typing and or like just painting or whatever, and she wants him to do, or like she wants him to make like an Eiffel Tower out of like popsicle sticks or something.
Mhm.
And she keeps like forcing him to be perfect, and she's like, "You'll never be perfect. You have to be perfect. This has to be perfect." And I think a lot of kids like just dealt with that. I think just a lot of people always feel like, "Oh, this needs to be perfect," or like they're just like perfectionists, or they have this like mindset where, well, I can't do anything good, or I suck at everything, or whatever. And I think this episode like really resonated with a lot of people too, because at the end of it, like Muriel's just like, "You're perfect just the way you are," like, and he, or like he has a dream or something, and he like doesn't. The next day, he isn't like worried about it anymore, and he like just does something wrong on purpose, and like he starts painting, and she's like, yeah, she asks him to draw a number to the perfect number 6, and and he does like this nice painting, this like nice weird like abstract painting, and then she's like, "Where's the damn 6?" And he like folds it up in a certain way where it ends up making a perfect 6. And because he did something imperfect that was really really cool, she just like loses it, and then that's how he overcomes it, because he just goes away.
Yeah.
But the other part is that we get Courage's origin story at the last episode, which I think is interesting. That it's in the last episode. You normally see it as like the pilot or something. Like we only really just hear about it in the theme song, where he's just like abandoned as a pup.
Mhm.
He was found by Muriel, but we don't know how he got abandoned or why he got abandoned or whatever. Um, and we kind of learn why Courage it might be afraid of everything. And there's a lot of theories that spawn from this too. We kind of learn why Courage is so protective of Muriel and everything. And he has like a flashback because he sees missing dogs on the milk carton or something, and it turned out that when he was a pup, his parents just took him to a vet to just get a regular checkup basically, and the vet turned out to be an evil vet that for some weird reason wanted to send dogs into space to get jacked.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why, but he felt that if you just put dogs in space, they would somehow become very, very muscular and become super soldiers. So I got some weird things to say about this guy. So he's working on some what's obviously a government program that like so he's getting all of his funding to do his research, but he's not really a vet anymore. He's kind of just gotten obsessed with it, and we don't really know if the project is even still a real project. For all we know, it got shut down, but he's like still obsessed with his research, which wouldn't surprise me. But he took Courage's parents away, and he planned to send Courage into space too. And Courage got out, and he just, found his way into the sewers. He sees his parents take off into the rocket, and it's like really, really sad. Um, and then Muriel finds him and names him Courage because she's like, "You're really brave to be out here in the cold by yourself." And so you see why he has the attachment, because Muriel is basically his new mother figure.
Yeah.
Um, and then of course they go back at that point, and because he's like really depressed, so they try to see like what happened. So they take him to the vet because they think maybe it's something else, and it's the same vet. So years later, Courage is freaked out. He's trying to tell them, no, 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 like take me away. Like we have to get out of here. We have to leave, and they don't understand. So somehow or another, the vet wants to put Courage into space. Courage is like trying to do everything that he can to stop it, and then somehow like Muriel and Eustace get locked in the rocket, and the doctor decides that he's going to send them to space anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it almost happens to Courage twice, and he's like, "No, last time I hid when I was a puppy. Last time I hid and my parents went away. I can't let this happen again." So this time Courage overcomes the doctor, and he he kind of rectifies, what he probably believes is all his fault. Like probably for all these years, he believes that he's the reason why his parents went into space, and
Right.
not that there wasn't really anything that he could do at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he gets his redemption arc
Yeah.
in this, and he saves Muriel and Eustace, and the doctor ends up getting sent up into space, and where all of these pissed off dogs on the moon that he sent up there, they're not jacked. I thought it would have been funny if like they had made all of them ripped so that like to prove that his experiment was true, and they of course didn't just they proceeded to just beat the crap out of him, which he deserves. Um, it is nice that all bad characters on this show get their comeuppance, I will say.
Yeah, that's also a recurring kind of theme in the show, is that all the bad people like really get it in the end.
Yeah.
And the people that are kind of like tragic figures, they like might do evil at first, but they usually are redeemed by the end of the episode. Like there's one episode where like there's like this old miser that dies, and his shadow ends up being like this evil shadow because like he was following an evil man his whole like life basically. And so the
Oh,
shadow goes and starts attacking like the farmhouse and like plays tricks on Courage and does all this bad stuff. But it turns out like the shadow was just like doing all that he knew, because that's what he knew his whole life, was that he was the shadow of an evil man. So and then Courage kind of like takes him. He's like, look, you could be a star. Why don't you like, because that's his dream, is he wants to be a star, but he can't because he's always a shadow. So he's like literally living in the shadow of whoever he is, attached to.
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Actually, I
So
like how there's like just like the whole figurative thing about it.
yeah. And so Courage kind of like takes him outside, and they're looking up at the stars, and like, Courage is like, well, I don't know about being a star, but you could like down here, but look, there's like so many stars up there. Like, why don't you like go like be a shadow for one of them? And like, it kind of like he's like encouraging, like trying to like solve the problem without like, just like fighting this shadow who's like just trying to get like redemption really in the end, and live his own life. And there's like a lot of that too. Like there's another episode where these ducks from space kind of like take over. They abduct Muriel and Eustace, and they like put these like mind control devices on them and are controlling their bodies. And Courage thinks they're like just like some crazy like alien ducks that are like doing this, because they're aliens, right? Well, it turns out they're just trying to save their brother who got captured by these like government agents, and they're basically like keeping him in like like Hangar 18 or something, basically, or like Area 51, and they're gonna eat him. They're gonna
Oh
like
God.
the chef wants to like cook him up and eat him and make a duck's like alien duck dinner. So they're literally just trying to like save their brother. That's all they do. And again, Courage like realizes this and helps them. And that's kind of like, again, it like, yeah, Courage is like obviously like trying to protect Muriel and stuff, but like he does the right thing in the end. Like if he realizes that like, hey, the bad guy really isn't that bad, like he tries to help them too,
Yeah,
in
or
whatever he
here's
can.
another one. There's a storm goddess who like there's like a big storm
Hmm.
over on the farmhouse, and there's a storm goddess, and she's really mad, and there's like a tornado and everything and whatever.
Yeah.
And it turns out that she's looking for her dog. Well,
Yeah.
and she thinks that it's Courage because her dog was also pink. So she knows that it's, even though she knows that it's not, that Courage is not her dog, she's like, he close enough. I just want to get I just miss my dog and I need to get a dog, so I'm just going to steal this dog.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm just going to keep the storm happening. So Courage reluctantly goes with her, and then he finds out about what really happened to the dog, and he finds this cavern of what's called the God Bone, and the God Bone is a bone that's, first of all, it's massive, but second, it's so addictive that every dog, it's impossible for the dog to look away and to resist its charm, so the dog proceeds to lick it, but the dog licks the bone because the God Bone is the God Bone. It's it's impossible for the dog to just stop licking the bone, so the dog licks the bone until it dies. And when you see in the cavern, there's all these dog skeletons, and then he sees this one withered dog licking the bone, and that turns out to be the storm goddess's dog. And then Courage starts licking the bone, and he has to like force himself to like bite his own tongue off, which for some reason he bites his tongue off multiple times in the show, in multiple episodes. It's like one of the most bizarre visuals I've
Well,
ever seen.
there's also there's the one episode where like Eustace gets taken over by a fungus, a foot fungus, and it's like the foot fungus like takes over Eustace's whole body, and he becomes a giant foot, and the toes are like these like mafia members, like with the big toe
Oh my
basically being
god.
like Al Capone, and like all the little toes are like his like minions.
Oh, that's
And
funny.
like it turns out that Courage has to like lick, like the only thing that cures the fungus is dog saliva, so he has to like lick the fungus, and he like licks the whole foot, and
Oh,
like
that's
it
disgusting.
cures him, but then his tongue turns into the fucking like Al Capone fungus.
Oh, that's funny. Well, anyway,
Yeah.
what I was getting at was like, so he bites his tongue off somehow. There's like a lot of weird tongue gags. And
Yeah.
he bites his own tongue off, and he saves the dog, and he brings the withered dog to the storm goddess, who is now pissed because she doesn't know what happened to Courage, and she's like delusional about him being her dog. So Courage shows her the dog, and he's like, "I found your dog," and I think he destroys the God Bone too. But he like he brings the dog back to her, and she's like, "Oh, that's so great, thank you so much," and everything. And then, she's like, "You can have Courage back. I'm sorry for everything that I did." And he like befriends her.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like she's another misunderstood one. But yeah, Cat is inherently evil. The veterinarian is inherently
Yeah.
evil. But then
LeQuack.
the quack is inherently evil. He's just like he's a doctor, but he's a duck, and he's like is not good for anybody.
Yeah.
But there's one the I he's this one is my favorite. He's the most interesting one. Fred.
Oh yeah, Freaky Fred.
Freaky Fred. He is Muriel's nephew, and
Yeah.
there are pictures of him in the house too. But he's I think he's the most complex villain that they have because he was clearly a barber who like had some kind of a traumatic event or something, and he just like had a psychotic break in the middle of
Yeah.
being a barber, and he just shaves. He has this compulsion to shave everyone's hair.
Yeah. He shaves hair. Like literally, that's all he does. And he like that whole episode is like it's funny because he's like basically he like talks in rhyme and he's telling his story in like this rhyme. It's almost, I think it's supposed to kind of be like almost like a reference to like Sweeney Todd
That's what
almost
I believe.
like a serial killer barber, except he doesn't actually kill people, he just shaves them. And he's
Yeah.
telling the story of like, you know, like the first time he shaved someone, it was his like gerbil. Like it was like this little ball of like puffball gerbil that he had. And he's like it was, and he keeps saying it was like, oh, I was naughty. That's like so like whenever he like was bad and he shaved something, he kept saying it was naughty. So like every time he like was tempted, he became naughty and he shaved it. Then he like shaves like his girlfriend's head basically, and like
I mean,
she has like this long
have you
flowing
ever
hair.
shaved your head yourself?
No.
It's it's a good time.
Yeah. And then he's at he thinks he's cured, and then he's at the barber shop and this guy walks in with like a huge bushy beard and like long hair, and it like just like like drives him off the deep end again. So he's like telling this whole story to Courage, who's locked in the bathroom with him, and he's shaving Courage as this is all happening. And you know, Courage like spots that Fred is like escaped from a mental asylum basically, and you know is trying to like and he needs to be put. So Courage is like frantically trying to like call on his cell phone like the bracelet that says call this number if like you see him, because he's an escaped mental patient. And meanwhile, like Eustace is like off, quote unquote, getting tools to fix the lock that's like stuck, but he's really just like sitting in his car reading the paper, and then he's like sleeping, and he's like not doing anything that's actually like relevant. And meanwhile, like Muriel's like just like sitting outside the door, thinking they're having like a nice little visit in the bathroom while Courage is getting shaved.
Mm.
It's just like the craziest like shit that happens, and like and then like Muriel like gives them like pancakes under the door, like, oh, are you guys hungry? And she like slides his pancakes under the door, and Fred starts just like shoving them down Courage's throat, and then he shaves the pancakes all. It's like it's so strange, and it's like very much like almost like that gross out like kind of like humor a little bit, like almost like
Kind
Ren and
of.
Stimpy or
It's a lot more tame though.
yes, yeah, I was gonna say it's like Ren and Stimpy or Rocko's Modern Life, but like way more tame. Um, and it really kind of falls back into more like the horror kind of humor that rather than like the gross out, but there are just like a couple of like gross out scenes as well.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a couple here and there.
there,
But the I would say like the thing with like Fred is just that he's a tragic character because like something obviously wasn't right, but
yes,
Muriel still cares about him.
yeah. Well, it's her nephew. Yeah, Muriel is
Yeah.
like very much like, you know, the sweet old grandma that just like loves everybody and is like so sweet and nice and like, you know, just like, you know, always wants like a cup of tea and just like makes pie and, you know, and is always kind to all of Courage's friends that he brings home, whether it's the Hunchback or the Bigfoot or whatever, like whoever comes in that Courage like, you know, meets, you know, basically like she's just very like hospitable to them. Like complete opposite of her husband, who is like just a complete asshole. He's
Yeah.
greedy. There's one episode where like they contact like a medium, and he talks to his dead brother Horst, and like is trying to like get this like suitcase open that has like money in it allegedly. And it turns out that the suitcase is like again guarded by some demon or possessed or something like that. But Eustace doesn't care because he's just greedy and he just wants the money. And like Horse is like don't keeps like saying through the medium like, you know, Eustace, there's nothing in there for you. Like don't worry about it. And like Eustace is like he doesn't care, so he gets the key which is sewn into his hat, and he opens the thing and then gets attacked by these hands and gets sucked into the suitcase, which is full of money, but like it's like in another dimension, like a pocket dimension basically, where it's just like endless piles of money. But Eustace is like so tied up in his greed he doesn't care because he's got like piles of money.
Well, he's the reason why King Ramses curse happens. He
Exactly. Yes.
because like King Ramses like his like ancient slab that like completes his sarcophagus. He just wants it back so that he can, go back to just resting.
Yeah.
And like it breaks off of the thing or something, or like archaeologists like or like grave robbers try to take it or whatever it is, and
Yeah.
like then it gets like it washes up, of course, by the Varm for some reason. And then Ramses throws it in the garbage because he doesn't think it's anything. And then like and then Courage sees King Ramses, and like then Eustace sees on the news that it's like worth millions of dollars. So he goes into the garbage to go get the slab back. King Ramses is just like, "Give me the slab, dude," and he's like, "Give me $2 million." And King Ramses starts
So
unleashing
what's your
curses.
offer? That's what he just keeps saying.
Yeah, he keeps saying, "What's your offer?" And he just starts like and then he just starts unleashing the plagues,
Yeah.
and it destroys their house. And then at the end of the day, he just replaces, like, they just put Eustace on the slab and replaces the image of King Ramses with him. So Eustace is like forced for eternity to be part of the slab. But I mean, we can't really talk about Courage without talking about its creator. And I do have we'll get to some interesting theories at the end. But
Hmm.
the creator is this dude John Dilworth, who is a really interesting guy. He lives somewhere in my neck of the woods, but I don't know exactly where. I've
Oh yeah.
probably run into him like at least once or
Inadvertently.
I probably have, just not knowing. He just looks like a
Yeah.
regular guy. He's a very goofy individual, but he's an animator. He damn well should be. But he works on he's got his like company that he like founded in like 91 that he's always worked on, that's done Courage and all that, called Stretch Films, where they still do a bunch of short films.
Yeah.
And in 2014, they did a CGI short of Courage, just called "The Fog of Courage." That I believe they were like kind of trying to do it in like a salt, like they used it, but they also wanted to use it. They also wanted to do like almost like an idea for like a for like some sort of like a new season or something like that. Like it was almost like a test project from what I've seen. I don't know if this is true. Maybe he could come on the show at some point, and we could clear the air and get the full thing on this. But from what I have seen, it is believed that this was going to be like a test run to see how like a reboot or a revival of the show would be, but I don't think that Cartoon Network ended up picking it up. But you can still watch it on the Stretch Films YouTube channel. It's just called The Fog of Courage.
Hmm.
And he has all of his other animated projects, and also just like all of these additional like behind the scenes animation things and all this cool stuff. But for some reason he likes to wear spacesuits that he like makes himself. He's probably a huge Devo fan, because like
Oh
this
yeah.
guy would be like the fifth. He would
He
be
looks like
like,
he looks like a member of Devo.
yeah, he really does. He like gives speeches in the spacesuit. I don't know, but he pitched the show to Cartoon Network in the spaceman gear.
Oh, that's
Like
probably why they gave it to
there's
him. They're like, this guy's crazy. He's probably a genius.
maybe, I don't know, or maybe this was like such an early day of Cartoon Network where they were like, we just need like, let's just let this thing go, where they almost had more of like a startup mentality, just like, yeah, this seems like it'll be fun, and they just like went ahead. There's a great documentary on Nickelodeon called The Orange Years that is just pretty much sums up that's what Nickelodeon was, where they were
Hmm.
just like super scrappy. And the head of Nickelodeon, they were just like this the company was just like, just we just need a we need a cartoon channel, so just do your best. And she was like, well, what's that supposed to mean? They were like, I don't know, just whatever you think would work, just go for it. And that's how you get all the crazy Nicktoons that we get. So maybe they were in a similar situation at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, this interview with TigerMediaNet.com, that's really the only thing that I've been able to find with of John Dilworth's interviews. But the question was just how did Cartoon Network pick up Courage the Cowardly Dog, and his answer was, I went to Hollywood and pitched the storyboard wearing full spaceman gear. I found this awesome silver one piece, jazzed it up with alien decals, spray painted boots silver, and found a helmet I rigged a propeller on top. I was also juggling. The room was full of executives. They all loved it. Also, the short, The Chicken from Outer Space, was nominated for an Oscar. That could have helped the acquisition. But yeah, it's just interesting. Like when he got his idea, he was he was just like I had seen that that Courage was based off of his that was like based off of a family dog of his when he
Oh.
was a kid.
I say if they were gonna say Courage is based off his life, and I'm like, Jesus, where the hell does this guy live? Where all
I
this
don't
freaky
know.
shit happened to him?
Well, there is a theory that I'm getting to now.
Oh, okay.
There's a few theories of the show that I think are that are pretty interesting, but um, there is a farmhouse so in New Mexico in an area that was once actually called the middle of nowhere, um, which is now called Truth or Consequences, which is the coolest name for anywhere that you're from. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like you're instantly a badass if you come from a place called Truth or Consequences, which was where Mick Foley had said that his 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 like where he's from for Cactus Jack was just always like his origin location, or like he was based out of like Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. And at the time, I don't think he had ever been there in his life, but he was just like, that sounds really cool. And I think it had something to do with Terry Funk or something, but I don't remember. It's in his first book, but in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, or as it was called at the time, the middle of nowhere, there was a couple um, called named William Patterson. I don't think any relation to the guy who got the school named after him, and his wife. I think her name was Martha Patterson, and this was in like the I think 1900s or something like that. They lived in a farmhouse that looks identical to the farmhouse on Courage the Cowardly Dog,
Mm-hmm.
and Um, I don't. I'm going to try not to talk too much about it because apparently, if you talk about these things, supposedly, it attracts them. I don't know how
Oh,
true that is, but they are supposedly a real cryptoid. But a cryptid. Cryptid, is that the
cryptid.
term?
Yeah,
Yeah.
cryptid.
Skinwalkers. So
Oh,
supposedly, in this area, it was known for skinwalker sightings, and weird things happened in that farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico.
oh.
And it
Are you
is
talking
believed
about?
it
Is it
is
Skin? Are you talking about Skinwalker Ranch in?
no.
Oh, okay, because that's another place that like is very much. It's like this ranch in Utah that has the same thing where there's a lot of weird shit. There's a lot of UFO shit that's happened there, and like allegedly hauntings and skinwalkers and all kinds of crazy stuff. And
Yeah, that's not the same place, but
oh
apparently this place was known for that too.
yeah,
And just for whatever reason, like because they were all by themselves for like miles. Their next door neighbor was like 5 miles away or something, but supposedly these couple had this couple. They said they were going on vacation, or they were like people believed that they hadn't gone on vacation, and then they went missing. It turned out, and no one really knows what happened. But and then years later, their next door neighbor just told the story how he went over there to the house one day because he hadn't heard from them in a while, and he just found blood everywhere, but he didn't find any bodies or anything, and he just found a dog. And but like creepy stuff happened in this. Apparently, creepy stuff happened by that farmhouse all the
yeah,
time. But this was another one of those things, and their next door neighbor was just he just told a story about how he went over by the house to check in on it. There was blood all over the basement. He cleaned it up, and he found a dog, and the dog was like fine. So, my theory is that the dog maybe could have been one of these things, but and like it, you know, could have done something to them. Maybe it ate them. I don't really know, but But I think that's a really interesting story. So a theory is that Courage the Cowardly Dog is somehow in a roundabout way based off of this particular incident
Mm-hmm.
and what could have happened, or like a reimagining of what went on in this farmhouse.
Yeah.
But there's other theories about the show itself. Just where like Courage isn't really a dog. Courage is actually he's actually like a depressed little boy, and he views himself as a dog because Eustace is constantly berating him or calling him stupid dog and everything, and he has very low self-esteem. So that's which I don't really know if there's really a lot of evidence on that, especially since we get Courage's origin story at the end. But
Yeah.
I like the interesting interpretation, and I mean, who knows? He could even actually just, let's just say that this is true, and that he, just because he's so traumatized, he views his real parents as dogs too,
Yeah.
and he like created this whole thing in his head about about like the whole veterinarian thing, and it was really just his parents were very ill or something like that, and they went to the hospital and they didn't make it. It's possible.
Yeah.
But there's a few. There's another one where Courage, because he's a dog. The whole thing is kind of like what the dogs like, just how a dog views the human world.
Yeah.
So like all these things that he becomes friends with, or all these like monsters or villains or whatever, it's just his interpretation of things, and it's not necessarily what's really happening.
Mm-hmm.
So like the Hunchback, or like all of these, or like helping the person find the missing dog, and like or like even Fred or anything like that. Fred might actually be the real thing, but there's but it's believable that a lot of these people that he like befriends are actually not really, they're not really these creatures that he sees them as, and they're really just other people.
Yeah.
So I think that one is probably the most
I mean,
believable of all the
that
Courage theories.
I mean, obviously that's true. I think for like the Hunchback, it's just like a guy that has deformity, and even possibly for the Bigfoot too, the Bigfoot
Mm.
episode where it might not actually be a Bigfoot, it might be just a guy that's like really hairy and is like has
Well, I
some
mean,
kind of
there is a real condition like that.
yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, I mean it's certainly possible. Um, but at the same time, it's just fun to speculate that maybe nowhere is just like something like Skinwalker Ranch, where like just like a lot of crazy shit happens just there for some reason. Like it's some kind of nexus point for the supernatural and aliens and stuff like that. There, there's some kind of attraction there. You
Oh
know.
yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible. I think the fun way is just to take the show at face value, and
Yes.
just this is real, like what's going on is really what's going on.
Yeah. It's
Um,
also it's interesting that like Courage can't communicate with Muriel and Eustace directly, but he talks to the audience, and he's also able to communicate with like the creatures that he sees and finds. Like he's able to talk to the shadow, he's able to talk to um the Hunchback and like a number of other of the creatures. He could talk to them, but like Eustace and Muriel can't understand them. So there's also another aspect there that's like I wonder why that is. Like what's the
mm.
lore behind that, you know? Um but he's able to like kind of imitate like things to like alert Eustace and Muriel, even though they don't really even understand it when he's doing it. Like he'll transform into the monster that he saw to like show them what he saw, but like they still are like they kind of blow him off a little bit.
Hmm.
Maybe it's just kind of like saying like that Eustace and Muriel just like are not like they're kind of oblivious to everything that's going on a little
Well,
bit.
I
And
mean, they usually are.
yes,
like Eustace usually ignores everything that Courage has to say,
Yeah.
and Muriel usually is just, she's just kind of floating on by and like is just kind of fixated on whatever her chores are.
Yeah.
And she usually doesn't understand the full extent of what's going on.
Yeah. And no matter how many times they get attacked by some creature or demon or ghost or alien, they don't leave the farm. They don't
No,
sell
I
the
was
farm.
gonna
They're just
say
like they
you
don't
think
give
that
a
they would
shit.
learn by now.
Yeah, they just like, and they can't even grow anything. That's like another running gag is that Eustace is like, he's either a really bad farmer or like the land that he has is terrible for growing things because
How do
they
they have
literally,
any income coming in?
it's never explained how they like survive because they have like literally like just a dirt plot with nothing on it.
Oh no, maybe they're sending Courage back out to those back alleys to
Oh
to go
God.
to go earn the keep,
Oh,
just pimping out their dog. Um, I mean, there's another theory too that and this is kind of sad that Eustace and because like Eustace and Muriel they only have well it seems like the only family that they have is Freaky Fred,
yeah.
and it's like there's
Yeah,
a
because
theory
Eustace,
that
his brother Horse is dead. So
yeah, but there's a theory that Muriel and Eustace tried to have children or they had a child and it passed away or they
yeah,
couldn't have children,
yeah,
and that Courage is just basically, Muriel gives her so she pays so much attention to Courage because she's still mourning the loss of her child, and Eustace
yeah,
is also still dealing with everything from that too. So he's like grief stricken, or he's perpetually like feeling guilty. So that's why he takes everything out on Courage because he wishes that his child was still there.
yeah.
I mean, there's nothing there. That's an interesting one because there's nothing that says that it. There's nothing that alludes to it, but there's nothing denying that too.
Right,
So
right.
I think that one is up to the audience.
Yeah,
If you think that that's what happened, then that's what happened. But there's nothing in one direction or the other. It doesn't confirm or deny.
right.
So I think that's probably the most interesting theory because it's just totally ambiguous.
Yeah,
But it puts the show in a different perspective if you watch it with that point of view in mind.
yeah. I mean, it certainly could be. They never mentioned that they have any kids anywhere else or anything like that. So, and they're obviously elderly. They're not like a
Yeah.
young couple. Um, so it's very
I
much
mean,
possible,
or they could have had a kid and they didn't turn out really good, so they
or
like
maybe, yeah,
don't so they disown them or they don't talk to them or something. I don't know.
yeah,
There's a number of possibilities with this one that
yeah,
I think is really cool. It'd be interesting to get John Dilworth's thoughts on this and like what like just to set the record straight, just to see like what he has to say the about the various courage theories.
yeah,
It'd be interesting if it really does have to do with the truth or consequences story of what befell the poor Pattersons.
oh yeah, of course,
But yeah, I don't know. It is uncanny. Like if you look at a picture of the house, it like looks like someone intentionally photoshopped this thing to like render the house if it was a real house, but
yeah,
no, this is really what it was. I think it's like a newspaper like clipping from that year or
right,
something. It's really bizarre. But yeah, they've tried to do. They haven't. They never. For some reason, the show is very beloved, but for some reason they've never brought it back, or at least not fully. I don't know why. And it seems like John Dilworth doesn't really know why either.
yeah,
In the interview that I've got up here, they asked him at the end, and he's just kind of like, I don't know. Yeah, they're like, well, we ever see a Courage remake, sequel, prequel, and he's like, well, I think this interview was from 2014, but he was like, Stretch is developing a prequel. I noticed so many reboots. I thought, why not Courage? We're under confidentiality agreement. Unfortunately, stay tuned later. So maybe, so at the time, maybe it looked like it could have happened, it, but it didn't. Oh no, I'm sorry. The interview's from 2019. So maybe it was likely that it could happen, and then like COVID happened and the budget went out the window. So I have no idea. But for some weird reason, there was like a Courage Scooby Doo crossover, but he had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
They did one. I don't. They did one like a while ago, but it had nothing to do with anything. And like he didn't have he had no involvement with the Courage Scooby Doo crossover, and he doesn't really know. But yeah, it's just kind of bizarre.
Yeah. Um, I honestly don't think they. I don't know if I would want it brought back now. The original voice of Eustace passed away during the series, and they got
Hmm.
another gentleman to finish the last episode, the last half of the series. But he's also now since passed away, and also,
I
um,
think Muriel has too.
yeah, the voice of Muriel has also passed away recently in 2021.
Yeah.
Um, so you basically have to have like an entire new voice cast, which I don't know. I don't know. I would want it. I think it would be fine to leave it at, let sleeping dogs lie, no pun intended,
Mm.
especially since like they're friggin' remaking everything now, and it's like I'm done with. I'm like sick of it, like I don't like Hollywood is so out of ideas, and like they're so like full of talentless hacks now that they can't even like come up with anything original anymore. So I would prefer to like not let Courage like be the what it is, and it's fine the way it is. It doesn't need to be rebooted or revived or anything, because inevitably it's not going to be good. Like there's been like a couple of like cartoon reboots that have been okay, but for the most part, like they end up being kind of shitty. So I would like to keep Courage as like good. You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Hmm. I mean,
So
a lot of people want it to happen, but like you said, I don't think it needs to.
no, it
It'd
doesn't.
be okay if they did something like a Static Cling, where
Like a
where
one-off
they
movie
like
or something.
yeah, like a one-off
Yeah,
1 hour movie thing for like Netflix or something, and then that was it. I'd
yeah.
be totally fine with that. Or if they did like even like a mini series arc. No, I don't think I want a mini series now that I'm saying it out loud. I think just a 1 hour like last hurrah kind of special, and then I think that would be good enough to close the book on it for like just forever.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even you could always watch like old episodes. Like that's what like I don't get. Like people want the like nostalgia thing, and they demand like stuff to be remade or like new episodes, and it's like you could literally just go back and watch the series, like just rewatch it. Like
Is it's because people like they get bored after rewatching it for the
yeah,
umpteenth
well,
time, so they think that they want. People don't know what they want, but they think that they want new episodes of this,
see,
whatever it
I'm
is.
like the opposite of
They
that.
think they want it.
I'll
Well, I'm not
rewatch the
saying you and
series
I.
multiple times. Like like I've seen Law and Order SVU like so many times. Like we'll just keep rewatching it over and over again. And like Bob's Burgers, I've rewatched the whole series like multiple times.
Oh
And
yeah.
Sopranos,
Well,
I've
like
watched.
I've rewatched like various Batman the Animated Series episodes and
Yeah,
movies, and
yeah.
like I still do.
And you know
I've
what?
watched. I can't tell you how many times I've watched the old episodes of The Simpsons, where now like it's just embedded into my brain, and it's
Yeah,
become
and
part of my
Seinfeld.
vernacular.
Like
Yeah.
Seinfeld, I will rewatch Seinfeld all the time, but I don't know if I would want a Seinfeld reboot or remake or new episodes of
No,
Seinfeld.
I feel like the Kirby Enthusiasm season about it was
Yes,
enough for me.
yeah,
But or like or like I was at the barber shop yesterday and Goodfellas came on. Like perfect example.
yeah,
Goodfellas came on. And Goodfellas is a movie that is pretty much on all the time. Like
yes,
you could find Goodfellas by accident somewhere any given day of the week. Like I bet you $100 for 365 days in one calendar year that if you turn if you look at the TV guide, you will find Goodfellas on some channel every single day of the year.
Yeah.
But it's one of those movies where they could keep doing that. Like, that's fine. I could
Yeah.
watch it anytime. If any point that it's on, I'm watching the rest of the movie. If I catch it at the beginning, great. If I catch it with 10 minutes left, great. If I catch it in the middle, fine. I really don't care. I can watch that movie and I will stick to that movie because it's just so good.
I
But
think
if they did a Goodfellas movie, but if they, I mean, now they really couldn't anyway. But if they
no.
wanted to do a Goodfellas movie now, like a
Well,
sequel,
I
or
mean,
I
that was
wouldn't
kind
want
of
it
like The Irishman was kind of like the spiritual sequel to Goodfellas, I would say, is The Irishman. But like
almost. But
they were so
that was
old,
that wasn't good.
it was so
It was too
long,
long.
and and like the de-aging that they used on
Yeah, that looked
De Niro's,
terrible.
it didn't look good. Yeah, it was really and it's like weird that they're trying to have De Niro and Pesci and play these like younger men that like, and it's like like they were like just they're too old now. Like, you
Yeah,
know,
just let it be.
I think the
There's
problem
nothing that you could do.
I think the problem is that the nostalgia craze has kind of jumped the shark at this point. Like the nostalgia craze has been going on for a while now, like years and years.
Oh yeah.
And it's become a crutch for Hollywood because now it's like they just will lean on the nostalgia thing. It's like, oh, we could bring back this old thing that everyone remembers, or this old TV show, we'll reboot it or make new episodes. And it's like they're using it as a crutch and they're not thinking about if it's good. Like when the nostalgia thing first started, the stuff that they were doing was kind of good still. So it was like, okay, like yeah, it's nostalgic, so it's got that going for him, but it's also like kind of original and it's good. But now they're just like leaning too hard onto the nostalgia thing and they're not like at the cost of like it being good. You know, it's just like, okay, this is shitty now. They're just literally like doing it for nostalgia's sake and not actually because like they had a good idea for. And the perfect example of that is like the Velma series that came out on HBO Max. Like it was so cringy and bad and like way over the top and like and borderline pedophilic, by the way.
Yeah.
That like and it's like who okayed this? Like I guarantee it was going to be like the original idea for it was just like this teen drama, and some fucking jackass executive is like, "Hey, I got a good idea. Let's make it Scooby Doo. Everybody loves Scooby Doo." And they're probably like, "But it's not. We don't want to do that. We want to make our own thing." It's like, "No, it's got to be Scooby Doo because nostalgia sells." And that's like literally the only reason why it was that. And it's like, you know, they don't stop to think if they should. They just do it anyway because they figure,
Yes,
oh,
that is exactly what I was going to get at. There's the Jurassic Park quote by Jeff
Yes.
Goldblum. Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Yes.
And I think that sums up the nostalgia craze like perfectly.
It could be said about like literally everything that's going on in Hollywood right now, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So I would
Just ask AI.
Yeah. Well, that'll be the new thing now, is because like the friggin' writer's strike, Hollywood's gonna start turning to AI to write all the scripts, and it's gonna be even more like contrived.
I mean, they're trying, but it seems like there's so much pushback all over because a ton of people are suing ChatGPT now. Like more people, like George R. R. Martin and some other people's joined in recently too.
Yeah, for copyright.
So like, I mean, and the New York Times is suing, and like Sarah Silverman and a bunch of people are suing the shit out of them. But
here's the problem with ChatGPT, and everyone thinks it's like this amazing thing, which it is really good. It's a cool.
It's really cool. It's a nice tool for people, but it's not like that's it.
And it's
it's pretty stupid.
It's a fancy search engine. That's all it is. Like people think it's like this like AI that can think for itself, and it really can't. It just is a fancy search engine that searches the internet for whatever you ask it, whatever information you give it. It searches the internet and like puts it in a way that feels like it's speaking to you, basically.
Right. And sometimes that information is a lie.
Yes.
If it can't find anything, then it just makes shit up. Like
yes.
Like it makes up sources and papers that don't exist.
Yes.
And like a lot of people have found out the hard way, oh no, this isn't that good. Other people have just found out in a funny way and they've just laughed about it. Like one of the first Bing things was that was like the Bing chat bot was gaslighting somebody into telling them that they can't see Avatar 2 because it's not 2 years in the future, because it's not 2023, and they're like, or 2022, and they're like, what's today's date? And it's like December 2022, and he's like, so can you give me the show times? And it's like, I can't, because it comes out in a year, because the AI has only been trained up to
Yes.
2021, so it
Yes.
like couldn't fathom that it was already in the future
Yeah.
from its training, that like it couldn't fathom that
Yes.
the actual that time has actually passed.
And here,
So
well, here's the thing
so
about
like it's just funny. I think they've probably fixed it by now, but it just was hysterical.
Here's the thing about the AI too is that we're not going to have a true artificial intelligence until they figure out quantum computing and perfect it, because
Right.
that's the amount of power you would need to equate to an intelligence that's equivalent to the human brain. You would need some kind of quantum computer, and they're working on it. They Google has a quantum computer. The U.S. government could bet has a quantum computer
Oh
somewhere.
yeah.
It's a black project somewhere, but it's not to the point where they could actually have an artificial general intelligence, which is a true AI. So that's still a few years off, I believe, and eventually we'll probably hit it, but it's not
I'm
going to
sure
be
we'll.
like,
I wouldn't be surprised if we see it in our lifetimes.
yeah. Oh, we'll definitely
I'm
see it in our
sure. I'm
lifetime,
sure we'll see it in our
but
lifetimes.
it's probably going to be 10 to 20 years from now. It's not going to be like tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like I said, that the Chat GPT is cool. It's a cool little tool. It's not perfect, and it's not like this amazing thing that's going to solve like everything, every problem in the world.
Right. And also there is they're doing like a Senate or Congress or both hearing like right now, and they've like said that they plan to have some kind of like regulation on AI in the next couple of months.
Yeah,
Now,
which they have to
that
do.
yeah, which they do have to do. I'm surprised that they're actually attacking this, but this is what happens when you have bipartisan like members of the houses actually doing their job and working together.
Yeah,
They actually try to get things done, but they only do that if the problem affects them.
yeah.
I don't expect them. Do I expect them to do the right thing on this? No. I expect them to do the best thing that they could do, as long as it respects their interests and the interests of their owners and buyers and sellers,
Well,
aka big tech and the lobbyists. So
look,
I'm sure whatever it is will favor them more than it favors you and I.
I
But
think
it's a step in the right direction that they're at least considering doing something.
I think all they
Um,
really have to do,
they just have.
Isaac Asimov's three laws are perfect. Like that's like what they should be programming into like future AI. Is just the three laws of robotics, where a robot may not harm a human being. I have to look up the exact terminologies here. Hold on.
A robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. A
Yes,
robot must obey orders given to it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with
with
the
the
first
first.
law.
Yeah,
A robot must protect its own existence as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law.
yeah. That's perfect. That kind of would like be enough to kind of like protect everybody, but unless you have like something like from the
Just
movie I
amazing he
Robot,
wrote
where
just
where the
amazing he wrote this in 1942.
yeah. But unless you have something where like the AI kind of like misinterprets the first law as like, oh, I have to protect humans from themselves, and that means it's like basically taking over and enslaving
Destroying
humanity.
humans.
Yeah,
I mean, it's possible. We should be protected from ourselves in most
yeah.
instances. Um, but yeah, there's that, and also there was a recent court case that some guy tried to copy. He was like an artist, and he tried to copyright AI generated art that he did so that he could license it, and um, and that people would have to pay a royalty fee or a licensing fee to use it or for it to appear in anything. And I think it went to like whatever his local Supreme Court was, and they struck it down, and they were like, "Nope, wasn't made by a person, so nope." And he's like, but I put in the prompt. I'm the one who told it. It was my idea. And they were like, they were like, yeah, it was. We're not saying it wasn't your idea, and we're not saying that you didn't have something to do with this, but you didn't paint it. You didn't do any drawings. You didn't actually make the art. You just fed the idea into an algorithm that it then plucked art from wherever it plucked it from, and
Hmm.
it put this thing together. So no, and they just ruled it has to be made by a human. And the case that they referenced was there was a photographer years ago that they gave a monkey a camera. They gave a monkey their camera and made the monkey take a picture. So the picture that the monkey took, they were trying to like they were trying to get royalty for it and money for it and everything like that. And the court ruled against them, and they said, no, the monkey took the picture. You didn't take the picture. You just gave, and it's not like you made the monkey take the picture. You just gave it the camera and it took a picture of whatever. You didn't tell it what to take a picture of. Like, you gave it a camera, it took a picture that turned out to be a good picture. So no dice. And that's basically what they did here. So I mean, all they have to do is just make that a law too,
Hmm.
and that stops the writer's strike, and that stops both strikes dead in their tracks. Um, like because then it just puts everything in the public domain, and what could they do with IP? Their IP is garbage. Their IP is useless now
Yeah.
because anybody can do anything with it.
Yeah.
So that would just that would kill both strikes dead if they just ruled on that. But I think there's a couple of different ways that they need to go about it, and I think they do. I think they should follow the Asimov laws of robotics, and they also need to put to constitute that they need to constitute that things can't be that like humans can't be replaced by AI in specific mediums. They can't like any anything created by an AI, like what as terms of like generated AI, that it should not be like it should be public domain,
Hmm.
like just by default. And I think that would ease a lot of things because and it would also quell a lot of fears. And I think also that they need to make a law that protects the likeness of people, like whether
Yeah.
it's their voice or their facial or their or just their appearances,
Yeah.
that they need to be that needs to be protected too, so that way that way you can't that way it's impossible for you to that way you could come after somebody for stealing their identity that way, or for trying to like
Right.
put them in a show and then do everything with them in perpetuity, or to clone their voices or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and that'll help too. So those are the things that they need to do. I don't know if they'll actually do it.
And you know what? There was something similar a few years ago with this, with like the NCAA, the football, the video games, that
Yes, with
players
the
were,
tattoos.
well, and just the players in general trying to like they wanted to be paid for their appearances in the video games, but the NCAA rules like state that the players can't be paid for anything,
Meanwhile,
and
the
they're like, well,
coaches
this
can
is
be paid, which is
yeah.
bullshit.
And it's like bullshit, like, and that's what they were suing about. It's like, well, you're going to use our likeness and sell copies of this video game that sells millions of copies and makes all this money, and we're not seeing a red cent of it. And we're like, it's like, most players that are playing college ball are not going to make it to the NFL, so it's like they're really like not going to make money. So it's like
Yeah, it's
it's
screwing them before they even like get in.
yeah.
Like it's that like they've already got the boots to them, and they're in the cradle at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, so it
What
is
happened
definitely
with that
something.
one, or is it still
I don't
ongoing?
I think they ended up like not just like taking out like player names or something from the game or something like that. They did
I
something
mean,
really stupid. Yeah.
that's an easy way to go about it. Is you just change the name and just say, "Oh, it's not the
Yeah.
person anymore."
We
But
were talking
then
about
what's
this
the point?
like
But
not too
then
long
what's
ago.
the point? Like you wouldn't even make like how would you even make money then if you're just like if like you're not even using the real players? Then
I
you're
guess they
just
just look, it'd be like the Key and Peele skit where it's like, they're just like saying like the like NFL players like crazy ass names that they always have. Do you ever see that one?
No, I
Oh
haven't.
my god, you have to look it up when we're done. It's hilarious. It's like it's them, and it's like just going like off of like more ridiculous and ridiculous name. Like one has like construction noises like as the name. It's just like
Oh
this
God.
because it's always like like when they're like introducing the players and they have like it's like these weird names and stuff like that. It's basically going off of that, and it's just hilarious. But anyway, back to Courage. It's a great show. It has a lot of like valuable lessons. Um,
It's
there was
deeper than it.
apparently,
It's deeper than it is on paper.
oh yeah, it's way deeper than it is on paper. And there apparently was a crossover with Scooby Doo at one point. I never watched it. John Dilworth was not involved in the production of it, so I'm
Yeah, I
sure it
said that
wasn't that great.
earlier.
Oh, did you say?
Yeah,
I've,
he didn't. He didn't really know what even like we said, ladies and gentlemen. We've been going for a good hour. It is 11:03 p.m. on a
yeah,
Saturday night, so forgive us. But yeah, he had no idea what he for whatever reason they didn't involve him with it, and he's not really sure why. But the
yeah,
last thing courage related that he did that you can find for your viewing pleasure, you can find it on the his studio Stretch Films. You can find it on their YouTube channel, and you can find it probably on a few other places.
yeah.
Um, it's called the Fog of
Fog of Courage.
Courage.
It's a CGI
So
short.
I mean, all you really need to do is just go to stretchfilms.com and you could find it on there,
Yeah, and
and
if you want to
they'll just
watch,
link right to it.
if you
Or if
want
you
to
want
watch
to
Courage,
watch Courage,
it's
it's
on Max. If you have Max,
yes,
it's on Max along with every other cartoon show or Cartoon
yep.
Network show.
So
Um,
it's all there, and then
yeah,
like we said, make your own opinions on what your favorite courage theory is. If you got a courage theory that we didn't talk about, then and you're listening to this on YouTube, then just punch it in the comments and just tell us what you liked about it, and
yeah,
you know tell us what and if you think one of our theories that we mentioned is true, then let us know in the comments too. But I think it's time to put a little bow on this one and just send it off into the sunset.
yeah,
But Courage the Cowardly Dog, fun show. Watch it when you have time. A lot of interesting characters. I hope that I really don't think that they need to reboot it, but I would like to see the 1 hour like a Static Cling like special.
yeah,
So hopefully they can do stuff like that. And also John Dilworth just has a really unique and interesting animation style.
yeah,
He's a fun guy,
yeah.
but he is the spaceman. So
Yes,
let him do his thing.
but he's not Spaceman Frank.
No, he's not. He's spaceman John. All right. Well, thank you everybody out there in digital media device land. We appreciate each and every one of you. We hope you learned something today, and we hope you had a good time. Um, this has been Why Does This Exist? I've been Chris.
And I've been Rob.
And remember, question everything.
Good night, everybody.